promote the repair of myelin. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. And this is a very important topic today because I'm going to tie three things together. Number one, we're going to look at research that was done recently. So this is peer-reviewed research showing that a parasite drug by the name of ivermectin has been found to help promote the repair of myelin in the disease model in animals that would be similar, or what they're using in animals to study multiple sclerosis. So this is not just relevant for MS, but we're seeing that this information is going to be helpful for people that are dealing with neurological diseases. So if you're suffering with PLS, if you're suffering with ALS or MS, etc., it's all relevant because, and we'll get into that. So I'm going to be tying together, number one, this study that was done in 2018, their findings, but I'm also going to be tying that together with some really important, profound insights and discoveries by Dr. Alan MacDonald, where he found worms in the spinal fluid of every MS patient studied, and then tying that into the real world, what we're seeing when we're helping wellness champions recover from chronic disease. And, is ivermectin helpful? Is it something that's testing well? Is it helping people to have symptom improvement? And you're going to be really excited by what I share. What I would like you to do is please, as I'm talking, put in your comments and your questions in the chat box, but then also please like and share this video right now. That's how we can get the word out. That's how we can get other people to start talking about infections and start talking about a new way, a better way to treat chronic disease. So very, very important. So share it, like it, and then also if you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, Live Disease Free, then make sure to subscribe. If you want to know when I go live with these trainings, make sure to hit the notification bell. And thank you so much for helping us get the word out. This is so important. So this study, I'm just going to read the title of the study, and it's fairly technical, so I'm going to really make it simple. But the study is a 2018 study. And the title is P2X4, Receptor Controls Microglia Activation and controls microglia activation and favors remyelination in experimental autoimmune encephalitis. So from now on, I'm just going to say EAE. EAE is the abbreviation for it's basically the MS model that they're using to study in animals. So they give, I'm not going to go into how they make these animals sick, but they make these animals sick and they believe that it is the best model that they have so that they can try different drugs and try different therapies to see if it'll help those animals, and it could potentially help humans too. So AEA is that experimental model where they're giving not MS, but something similar. It's inflammatory condition to these animals, and it's mice that they're dealing with. So in this study, they found that the antiparasitic drug ivermectin modulated inflammation. So we know that with all chronic disease, inflammation is present. And so by giving this drug, the inflammation was modulated, and that allowed for myelin to recover. So the myelin to repair itself, or the body, the immune system to repair the myelin. And what I find really frustrating is that the bulk of the research that's done for not just MS, but all chronic diseases, instead of trying to figure out what is causing the inflammation, what is causing the faulty or improper immune response, that's what they're trying to say. So autoimmune, your immune system is attacking itself. So instead of saying, well, maybe there is an infection there, maybe there's a reason that our immune system is working hard and there is inflammation, because we know, science knows that, and this is more current science, that in chronic disease, whenever inflammation is present, if it's not an injury where you've hurt yourself, then really what it is it's the battleground between your immune system and the infections, the pathogens, we call them disease-causing microbes. So inflammation in chronic disease, think infection. It's the war zone, right? And in the war zone, there's lots of damage that can happen. And that's what happens with different types of chronic diseases. We have damage, and that is tissue injury. So there honestly is no money in treating infections. There is money in us taking immunosuppressive drugs for the rest of our life. So unfortunately, very little research is going into finding which infections are causing chronic disease because it's not profitable, right? These companies have to make profits and it's not profitable, so they don't research it. And our governments are very limited with their funds, so they are not going to research it either. So that's why we're in this dilemma. So the bulk of the research, again, is focusing on, okay, how can we shut down immune responses? How can we change immune responses instead of looking at what's causing the immune response? And that is where the cure is, right? And that, if you've been following any of my work, I've got lots of videos on YouTube and Facebook, Live Disease Free, and make sure to watch some of them after. We've got a playlist for infections and all kinds of other wonderful things. So the question again should be, what is causing the immune response in multiple sclerosis? And not how do we alter that response? So let's tie it all together. So with this study, what they have found, I'm going to backtrack. So number one, if you have been listening to my work, what I'm teaching is that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease. Actually, all chronic disease, they are infectious diseases. Whether it's any type of autoimmune cancer, heart disease, etc., all chronic diseases are involved. They're the major cause of these chronic diseases. So if you want to look at research that links MS and infectious disease or infections, MS and infections, then go to our website, livediseasefree.com. After livediseasefree.com, in the main menu, you'll see research. And I have put together studies linking or where they found the fungal overgrowth in patients with multiple sclerosis in their blood, in their central nervous system, in their brain cells, in the nucleus of brain cells. They've also found Lyme, which is like Borrelia, and probably others in the central nervous system. And the biggest discovery that we found, which really makes the most significant change in recovery quicker, is the parasitic infestation. So there's lots of studies there linking parasites also. If you haven't watched Dr. Alan McDonald's video, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Make sure to watch that after this video because it is so profound. You'll find a link under the parasitic section on the Live Disease Free research page under MS and infections. Go down to parasites and you'll see Dr. Alan McDonald's lecture. It's only 15 minutes long. You have to watch it. You'll get super excited when you do. So number one, we know that MS is an infectious disease. It's caused by infections. And if you've been following my work, it's not just one. So I'm not saying that ivermectin is a cure for MS. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that it has been shown to be very helpful in treating one of the, I would say some, because it will treat large and small roundworms. Falarial worms are small ones. And so it is very helpful in treating some of the infections that we're dealing with. Number two, we talked about this a minute ago. Inflammation is caused by infection. So inflammation is always present in all chronic diseases, and inflammation is caused by infection. Think about it, the war zone between your immune system and the good guys and the bad guys. And your immune, sometimes the war gets out of control. Sometimes these microbes have ways to cause immune dysfunction. We're going to talk about that next week when I talk about falarial worms and neurological diseases such as MS and others. So they have ways to hide from the immune system, to make the immune system blind to them, to cause the immune system to maybe overreact. Like a stronger inflammation. So there's at least 17 different ways that Dr. Alex Vasquez has put together that research and science knows that these are all ways that these infections can cause immune dysfunction and inflammation in the body. So that's all well documented in science. So in this study, the 2018 study that I'm talking about, they were talking about microglia cells, which are immune cells. They're like in our body, we have these macrophage immune cells, and they're like Pac-Man. They're the first line of defense. They are looking around, they're patrolling our body, They're looking for tissue injury and they're looking for pathogens. And they sound the alarm. They have receptors on them and they sound the alarm, and they get other parts of the immune system involved to help deal with the enemy. So they're like the first soldiers on the scene, and they're called microglia. When they're in the central nervous system, they're called microglia. And when they're in just the body, they're called macrophages. And think about them as Pac-Man also. So they can be, depending on what's going on in the body, they can be pro-inflammatory. It's like, hey, I found a pathogen. We need to send out the signal. Pro-inflammatory. We need to get the war going. Or it's like, okay, we've dealt with the pathogen. Now we can start to just do some cleaning up and repairing. And so now we can decrease, or anti-inflammatory. So they can be pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory based on, well, this study has found a receptor for the first time where they feel that the receptor is really important in that part. So what they did is they tried to decrease the activation of the receptor, because it's more active when we're in a pro-inflammatory state, and they found it still increased the inflammation. So then they also used ivermectin, and they found that with the ivermectin, that actually modulated so it brought down that inflammatory response of these microglia cells or macrophages in the central nervous system. So it helped to modulate the immune response. So this is one study, and this is what they found. So however the mechanism was, and we're not clear on everything 100%, but what the mechanism, whatever it was, they found that giving ivermectin to these mice that had the animal model of multiple sclerosis, it helped to settle down the inflammation, and there was a significant ability for the myelin to repair itself. So I'll just read what it said. So ivermectin induced a rapid and significant improvement of the motor deficits of EAE that led to an improvement in corticospinal tract function and recovery phase. So it was significant. It definitely helped. And so this data indicates that ivermectin treatment effectively promoted myelin recovery. So why aren't we using it? I don't know. And that's why please share this information. Let's please get more research going in this area. It is a very safe drug if the doctors are prescribing it properly. It's very safe and very well tolerated. And, a lot of us are so sick, we don't have, 20 years for them to research it well enough to see if it helps well enough. It's a deworming drug, and it's been used for many, many years. This study also, the researchers hypothesized that ivermectin allowed these immune cells, the microglia cells, to switch from being inflammatory to being anti-inflammatory or more modulatory, which allowed, so once this war is decreased, then it's allowing these cells or their body to just heal itself. So this is what the study found. Now let's take it over to Dr. Alan McDonald's work. I absolutely love it. He should get a huge prize for this, and I hope you guys help me share the word. Share it with your neurologist. Share his lecture with your GP. Share it with your friends. Share it with MS groups. Dr. Alan McDonald's lecture, which you can find on our Live Disease Free website under research, and then go down to parasites. So he found, and I believe it's 2014, he looked at the remains of at least 10 people that died of MS. So this is from Brain Bank. So these are confirmed people that had MS and died of MS. And in every single case, he found many, many small Falarial worms in their spinal fluid, in their brain also, but more often in the spinal fluid. The significance of this is that for about 100 years, veterinarians have known that when these worms, they're very small, they get into the central nervous system of domestic animals, that would be horses, cats, dogs, cattle, sheep, etc. They have all the symptoms that people with MS have. They have numbness, they have spasticity, cramping, they have balance issues, they have extreme fatigue, blindness, paralysis. All those symptoms are similar in those animals and in MS. And you would think, why has no one ever made that connection before? Why, if the vets know this and neurologists know that our symptoms are the same, I have no idea. I don't know. But all I know is that it's such a huge, consistent link that it needs to be researched further. You can imagine when you have little worms fluttering around in your spinal fluid, how much damage they can cause, right? And I want to talk about these filarial worms. I've talked about them about a year ago, but I'd like to go deeper into that topic next week on the same time, Wednesday, because they are linked to so many different chronic diseases depending on where they're located in the body. And there's different cousins, there's different family members, so they're not all, there's many different small filarial worms, and they're very, very small, maybe the size of a dot of a pen or even smaller. So they end up in our eyes, they end up in our central nervous system, they end up in our blood, they can hide in our tissue, they cause elephantitis. We'll talk more about all of that next time. But when we're seeing that ivermectin in a study can be helpful for all of this improving and repairing myelin, and then we see the work of Dr. Alan McDonald, that's number 2, and then tying it together with what we see in the Live Disease Free Academy, our students, like we discovered this a couple of years ago. And so our students, we've been like, okay, so which treatments are most helpful for these filarial worms and other worms? We had no idea how infested we were with parasites in recovering from chronic disease. We've learned a lot. So we started with Dr. Alan McDonald's work and okay, what helps? And ivermectin is definitely one of the drugs. It's not the only one. It might not be the best one by itself, but we're seeing that through energy testing. So our students will take a sample of the most commonly prescribed parasite drugs when they're ready to treat. They first have to get ready. They have to follow the prep phase. But when they're ready to treat, they take a sample of each of the common parasite drugs and they go to a practitioner that can do energy testing. And very consistently, I would say the vast majority of the time, people test really well for ivermectin. What's so frustrating about this is that ivermectin is one of the essential drugs according to the World Health Organization, and I believe it's won a prize. I don't know if it's a Nobel Prize years ago. It is a very, very important drug. It is not available in some countries. In Canada, it's not available. As far as before, it was not available. Now it is a restricted drug. I called the government to ask them why is it restricted. I did this a couple of years ago because I thought, well, I didn't know much about it. Maybe it has a terrible adverse effect. No, the company that makes it said that there was no market for it in our country. Right. We use it for our animals, but for humans, the animals can get these worms, but we can't get these worms. I think not. So unfortunately, this drug, it's very hard to get in Canada. Like you have to work with a doctor. And the doctors in Canada are not allowed to prescribe medications to treat worms unless they have a positive stool test. So they're really not looking for these filarial worms. They're looking more for, eggs of maybe larger worms. And I have yet to see, like in Canada, we can have stool tests done, which is covered under our healthcare, but we don't get any results as far as showing positive test results. So the doctor's like, oh, you don't have parasites. And it's like, nothing could be farther from the truth. I've had stool tests done a couple of times saying I'm totally clear, no parasites. And I have treated multiple times with these parasite drugs. And I have passed many roundworms that I could see, big ones, not the 2 feet ones. Mine are more like 10 to 12, 13 inches long maximum that I've passed. For myself, intestinal flukes, which are about 3 inches long. They're disgusting. And so when you see, like, through hundreds of students, probably about 200 students by now that have been working in the academy, building a plan, accessing the treatments and the practitioners and getting well, like it is so profound how important these drugs are for our recovery. We find that herbs are not strong enough. We wish they were, but at this point, we have not found any herbs combinations that are strong enough. But again, the ivermectin by itself, if we have filarial worms, it's probably not going to be enough to clear them. We might have some symptom improvement, and that's why we have to work with practitioners and combine them with at least one or two other drug treatments to clear these filarial worms. So could it be that ivermectin is helping because it's just treating the cause that's causing inflammation? And as the inflammation is settling down, then our body can just heal itself like it is programmed. It is genetically programmed to do that. It knows how to do that. And so it's important to understand that there is not going to be a single cure for MS. And we have to get that through our heads. We really do, because how many years have we been spending millions and millions of dollars on research, and we're no closer to a cure right now? That is because we're going in the wrong direction. All our disease-modifying drugs are immunosuppressive, and they're suppressing our immune system, and our immune system is not the problem. The problem are these worms, big and small, and other microbes. And also sometimes it's the bacteria that they carry. So we know that and I'll talk more about it next week, but sometimes when they kill some of these filarial worms, they carry this bacteria inside of them. And when they break open, then our immune system has this very strong immune response to those bacteria, and that a very strong inflammatory response to them. So that's what's making us sick. And that is what I hope you guys help me get the word out, because it's time. It's time that we move in a different direction. It's time that we start to help people on a grander scale recovering from chronic disease. And it all stems down to treating the cause, which is infection. I'm going to go to your questions and see if you guys have any questions for me. Oh, and then after I go to your questions, maybe I'll be talking about this through, but I just want to talk a little bit about the steps that we take to recover. Hello. So hi, Maureen. Hi, Dawn. Hi, Rick and Marianne. Awesome that you're here. I don't have your questions yet. Go ahead and type them in. I don't see them. Hi, Helen. Hi, Robert. Hi, Mary. Hi, Denise. Katie, Mary. Let's see if there's any questions here. You're very welcome, Mary. Hi, Colleen. You saw the huge parasites in your brain on your MRI. And yes, our brains look like cauliflowers with the MRIs, but those lesions that are present in the MRIs, those are pockets of infection. It may not just be worms. It could easily be the Lyme. It could be fungal overgrowth. We know that the central nervous system is not a sterile environment. That is the big problem when we're taking these immunosuppressive drugs that prevent our T cells and our B cells from going into the central nervous system, because they're trying to control the immune system. Then we are susceptible to whatever infections start to develop in our central nervous system, because we've lost our natural defense or greatly diminished or compromised our natural defense when we're taking immunosuppressive drugs. Hi, Julie. Hi, Katie. You're not sure when the appropriate to ask the question, but what dose of antihistamine is needed. So with antihistamines, it's very interesting. I've done some videos on antihistamines. Make sure to go and watch them later if you're interested in that. But the antihistamine, we're using it only for a specific reason. So we're only using it for people that can't sleep. Like if they're really sick and they find us and they're starting with the academy and they want to use an antihistamine to help promote sleep. We know that it will help to make us more sleepy, but it also sedates the parasites. And it also does help to settle down inflammation a bit. Because it's a drug, I don't recommend it all the time. But in the early stages, when people have a hard time falling asleep or they wake up often throughout the night, it can be really helpful, the antihistamine, to help them to sleep well. And that really helps to promote healing too. So we would just follow the bottle dose. Again, you have to check with your practitioner. You have to make sure that you're not taking any medication that will interfere negatively with it. So in this whole process, you have to work with somebody who's skilled, because if you start, I know that antihistamines are over the counter, and I know that one of them is used for helping promote sleep, but sometimes there's negative interactions between herbs and medications, or medications between the two of them. So you have to be really careful when you're doing things like that. But if you go to a pharmacist and you let them know what you're taking and they say there's no interactions negative or whatever condition you have, your doctor could help with that too. But just a regular strength, a lot of students find regular strength Benadryl is really helpful to help them sleep through the night. And then as they're treating the infections and feeling better, they no longer need the antihistamines. Hi, Tone. Hi, Mary Beth. So you are just mystified by how to get your doctor to diagnose parasites in your organs. Any suggestions? I don't think you can, Mary Beth. I think you have to just not worry about it and just focus on treating. Most of our students are their GPs, their neurologists. It's like asking a plumber to learn electrical work. They're not interested in it. I know that they should be, but they have studied for many, many years. They've been told that there is no known cause, that parasites are not an issue in developed countries. So you're not going to convince them. The only time that they might look outside of the standard of care is if, number one, many of their patients get well by treating parasites. They might just start to scratch their head and wonder what the heck's going on. Or sometimes they get sick or their family members get sick, and then they look outside of standard of care. Then they're like us and they're like, there's got to be an answer. We just had an MD join our academy, and she's like, I know the MS drugs are not going to help me at all. So it comes with suffering. Or there are a few neurologists, not many, but neurologists or doctors that are more into research, and they're starting to study the microbiome, and they're very fascinated by this. They still don't know the role that parasites play in it, but they're open to this. And if they're involved with the microbiome and looking at, different bacteria and things that are living in MS versus not, they might be interested. But it doesn't hurt to share Dr. Alan McDonald's lecture with them. Just say, hey, I thought I'd like to share this with you because it's really profound and I know that this is going to help me recover. And just see if they'll watch it. Just ask them, did you watch it? And if they didn't, let it go. And if they did, that's wonderful. You've planted a seed, and that's what we're doing, is we're planting seeds. Hi, Sean. Gail, could you please share the link to the study? Yes, we will. We'll stick it in the feed. If you can just check back, but we will stick it in the top of the feed. I don't know if Danielle has it, but we will definitely do that for sure. But if you even search the title, and I'll read the title out to you one more time. So it is P2X4, receptor controls P2X4, receptor controls microglia activation, and favors remyelination in experimental autoimmune encephalitis. So you can stop the video and just write down and get everything there. So that's the title, but we will definitely post a link to it in this. And unfortunately, if you didn't have the experience we do, you wouldn't understand the huge relevance of ivermectin, because the study, number one, is EAE a true model of multiple sclerosis, right? They're giving these rats or these mice, they're giving them a neurotoxin and they're giving them a mycobacterium to cause the inflammatory response that is similar to MS. It could be what we're finding. It could be that there are multiple infections that can cause this inflammatory response in the central nervous system. So we don't even know if it is a real accurate model for multiple sclerosis, but that's what they're using. But it's funny how they don't know what causes MS, but they can give something similar to animals by sticking neurotoxins and mycobacterium in mice and getting that response. So it's very interesting. Hi, Sean. You're very welcome, Rick. My pleasure. Hi, Colleen. And what you guys can do is, your job is to get the word out, right? That is the only way things are going to change. Well, that's not your only job. Your other job is to start to implement all the stuff that I share. I have a lot of videos on YouTube. You can start watching, you can start implementing the prep phase. So start to change your diet. And I have students that have found me a few months before they started implementing. They're feeling a lot better. They are ready to treat. They join the academy and then they're laughing. So you can have a lot of symptom improvement by changing your diet. That is decreasing the food to the infections, supporting the body. And then when you're ready to treat, right, then you need to work with someone. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as, taking a vitamin. It does take, you have to be really careful because it's medications and you got to work with doctors. Hi, Aurora. You said the worst area of your brain that's infected is the stem. And actually, that's been linked with the vertigo or balance issues for sure. I don't know if you have balance issues, but it definitely has been. And you have one more booking. Awesome, Mary. I'm excited to chat with you. Gail, someone was discussing this on Facebook a while ago. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Medications are, okay, let's put it this way. With medications, if you don't use enough, you run the risk of having these parasites becoming resistant, and then it'll never work for you. If you take too much, you can get really sick. And that's why we work with practitioners, absolutely. Does garlic help? Amber's wondering. Yes, raw garlic is something I can talk about. Raw garlic, when our students are in the prep phase and they're getting ready to treat, they will often chop up raw garlic and put it on a spoon, and then they'll finish making their food and they will start eating their food, and then they'll have maybe starting with 1/4 teaspoon. Listen to your body with anything that I share. Remember, this is for educational purposes only, but they will take 1/4 teaspoon or 1/2 teaspoon chopped garlic on a spoon, first eating their food, and then just swallowing it with water, not chewing it. Give some to your spouse or your partner so that they have a little bit of garlic on their breath too. And then finish eating your food. Garlic is really hot, and when you sandwich it in between food, you'll notice that it doesn't burn. And our students some of them will go up to about a tablespoon 2 or 3 times a day with their meals, not ongoing, just for periods of time, maybe a couple weeks at a time. And it definitely is very helpful. It is antifungal, it is antibacterial. But again, don't take a tablespoon 2 or 3 times if it's not agreeing with you. So these students are also decreasing their carbs, and they're following the steps that I've shared on my videos, the prep phase, and then they are taking something like that. And they definitely notice some improvements. It's not going to get rid of the worms out of our central nervous system or out of our blood, but it definitely helps to discourage a lot or some of the smaller microbes, the pathogens, the disease-causing microbes that are in our intestines for sure, in our digestive tract. So raw garlic I love it. It's anti-Lyme, antifungal, anti-small parasite. It's just great. Maybe I think it's even antiviral too. Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Patty. What kind of doctor is best to test? So if we have samples, we have a doctor that'll write a prescription, and then you take the samples and you take them to either an acupuncturist who does energy testing, or a naturopathic physician, or a chiropractor can do applied kinesiology. But again, they're not used to testing these treatments and to see which parasite drugs are best for you. So some of them are not interested in doing that, and some of them are definitely interested in doing it. So you just have to ask, say, I want to treat parasites, and I'm working with this practitioner, and I have some samples. I'd like to bring them in. Would you be willing to energy test me? So sometimes they use like muscle testing. Sometimes they use machines. Either way. And again, this is where it's really important to work. And that's what we help people do in the academy, because sometimes we're working with practitioners that we don't really know, and we don't really know their skill level. And so sometimes the readings are not 100% accurate. So we really go by our diagnosis, our health history, our symptoms, and then we look at the energy testing as one piece of information. If it's consistent with everything else, great. And also with energy testing, it's important to know that just because, let's say, ivermectin doesn't show up to be important for you to treat, that might not be the case with energy testing. It is not an exact science. It is helpful, It's not an exact science. So with energy testing, very often it's what is the most helpful treatments for you at the time that are in the forefront. They might be showing up stronger, right? And so it's up to the experience of the practitioner to see that. So it might be that, so some practitioners will recognize that they need 3 to 5 parasite drugs, and others will say, oh my gosh, I could never say that you test well for 3 or 5. That's way too much. It could hurt you. But because we have experience, we know that these drugs are really well tolerated if taken the right way, at the right dose. And what we found too is that it's very important to use like strategy. So the prep phase is important. And then we're using oxidizing agents with the parasite drugs, with the herbs. And that is where we find the greatest success. This is going to continue to evolve. Like as we have more and more experience, we might find that with these Falarial worms that there's 3 drugs together, that is a combo that we didn't know before. That's a much more effective clearance of them out of our system. They're very difficult to treat, the Falarial worms, because they're very small. They get into our tissue, they get into our eyes, they get everywhere. And so with the drug treatments that we're using, and so ivermectin is super helpful, but just taking it by itself is not going to, I don't believe it will cure the MS. We haven't found that yet. It's in combination with other drug treatments, but it is very helpful. And that's what we're talking about. It's a really helpful drug. It should be available everywhere in every country. And doctors should have experience in recognizing parasite infections and in treating them. Hi, Bonnie. So how have your latest MRIs been? I have been MS free for many years. So the doctors, they don't need to do an MRI. That's the thing, is if you've been symptom free, that's what happens with my students too, is as you become symptom free, they say, you come back if you need me, but you don't need to come back. Since you've been taking various products that I've talked about, I have been symptom free for years, many years. Like it's been over 30 years that my diagnosis was over 30 years ago. What I did though, is I have treated parasites. So since I've learned about all of this and my students are treating parasites, this is something that all of us should do, just like we should deworm our dogs and our cats and our horses. They recommend that, and we should be deworming ourselves at least once a year, probably twice a year at least, especially if we are, let's say, working outside in the dirt a lot, or let's say we're working in situations with lots of animals. Some people have cats in their house and dogs. Some people sleep with their pets. So, and it's funny because we never dewormed our animals. We didn't know we were supposed to. And a lot of people don't. And then they have them sleeping in their bed with them. And you know what animals do? They just eat disgusting things outside. So we're exposed to a lot of parasites and we're not treating. Yes, ivermectin, Marianne. That's what I'm talking today. What is the dosage of ivermectin? I can't go into those kind of things. This is an educational talk. If I dare to prescribe or diagnose, I will be taken off. So this is an educational talk talking about how important this drug is in all neurological diseases. I don't know about every single person, but it is definitely like one of the front runners. Very, very important. Hi, Dominica. No, they're not allowed. Anita Kennedy. What do you mean by support the body? So what do I mean by support the body is that when we are dealing with a parasitic infestation, our body has struggled for a while. And so before we start to kill the parasites, we need to build our body up. And I do share, I've got some different videos on our YouTube channel, Live Disease Free. So we want to make sure that we're having daily bowel movements. We want to make sure that we're sleeping at least 8 hours a night. We want to remove mold from our home. We want to reduce the wireless radiation. We look at our blood work. We make sure that I share a lot of this stuff in the Coachathon too, if you want more information, but we look at our blood work and we support our physiology. Maybe our thyroid is low. Maybe our iron is low, our blood iron. Maybe we're dealing with adrenal fatigue, or there's a lot of different things that we want to look at our blood work and just make sure that everything is in the good range, in the normal range. And if not, we need to support it. So we do all those things between the eating plan by decreasing the carbs and then supporting the body, people are already feeling a lot better. And then it's time to start treating. Then we look at, our health history, our symptoms, our parents' health history, and then also the energy testing can be helpful. But I've had times, one time in particular, when a student was tested by a really good, or I should say a well-respected naturopathic physician, Eastern Canada. He was also tested by another well-respected naturopath in British Columbia. Both of them said he didn't have parasites. And I'm like, there's no way you can have MS and not have parasites. Like that he had parasite symptoms too. And so he went to a third one, and that person tested him well for 5 parasite drugs. And so if he would have listened to the first 2 energy tests, he would have said, no, I don't have parasites. They've told me I don't. And he would have still been sick. And so he did go and treat, and he has passed a lot, and he's had improvements. He's still treating right now, but he's finally starting to improve while he's treating the parasites, and he was not before. He has slight improvements with changing your diet and supporting your body, but it's not until you start to get those parasites out that you really have the significant improvements. Okay, here we go. So let's see if there's any other last. Yes, you would need a prescription for ivermectin, absolutely. So you can get it in countries, but you would definitely need a prescription for it. You're very welcome. Hi, Brian. Hi, Gail. I think that's it for the questions. I don't know, Gail, if that is, I will check it and I'll go to your comment after. I don't know if that is the link. It probably is if you have the exact title. And so you can read through it. And so it's nice that they have that article, but the mechanism of the help for the ivermectin, I really believe maybe there's other mechanisms of why it's helpful with modulating the immune system. But with our students, the biggest thing is it's treating these worms, and that is why they are recovering. We have a lot of students that have recovered. If you're at the place where you have just met me for the first time and you're like, man, this makes a lot of sense, but I don't know, I need to research it more, watch my videos on YouTube and on Facebook, Live Disease Free. If you're at the place where you're like, Pam, I'm ready. I'm so ready to get these worms and these other parasites out of me, then watch my masterclass training, How to Recover from MS. It's not just for MS, but I do attract a lot of people with MS. We have people, students that are recovering from ALS, PLS, Parkinson's, also very similar parasites, maybe a little different, but very similar often. Watch my masterclass training, and then you can watch the coach-a-thon. You can chat with me. You can become a wellness champion. You can start treating. That'll be the best Christmas present you could ever have, and start the new year on a whole new way of life, which is so awesome. Other than that, next week I will be back 5 o'clock Pacific on Facebook and YouTube, Live Disease Free, talking about filarial worms and other filarial worms in chronic diseases, neurological diseases like multiple sclerosis, ALS, and PLS. So we're going to learn a little bit more about these little critters that are really causing us a lot of grief. Until then, take care and bye-bye for now.